Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming today. Can everybody hear me? All right. So my name is Jillian Busick. I'm actually going to be the moderator. And my role at the agency is to modernize SIPRNet. I know everybody's looking at me like, that's a big task. So I brought Carissa Landymore and Julian Breyer with me today because as we move towards a single tenant environment for 365 and we bring on zero trust capabilities and we're looking forward to a mesh architecture, the activities that these two teams are doing are key to modernizing the SIPRNet. And so I'm going to give them a minute to introduce themselves. So Julian, I'll let you.
Hey, my name is Julian Breyer. Can everybody hear me? Awesome. My name is Julian Breyer. I'm the chief engineer for Thunderdome, which is DISA's first foray into zero trust. It's not a full-fledged zero trust solution, but laying the foundation. And so we've made some good progress over the last year in deploying a NIPR solution and are now trying to take some of the lessons learned from that NIPR solution and applying it to SIPR where it makes sense. Carissa?
Hey everybody, my name is Carissa Landymore. I'm the program director for DIOS at DISA. I have a portfolio that I manage, but for today's session, I'm here really to talk about 365 SEC and the work that we've been doing the last couple of years to bring enterprise collaborations capabilities into onto the high side, into the classified world. And so I'm really excited because it's really about the synergy. You're going to hear that word a lot today, to modernize and make sure that we have key collaboration and talking to the mission partners and figuring out what do they need and working together to bring that to reality. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, so thank you both for attending with me today. So I talked a little bit about, a mesh architecture, but really what we want to get at in the end is the user experience. And I know that from Carissa's conversation earlier this morning, right, that is their goal from a 365 perspective. And the ability to have a good user experience also lies within endpoint security. And so I believe that interoperability is key to that, and API-enabled capabilities is key to that. And so I wanted to ask Julian really quickly what his thoughts are on what he's seeing from an interoperability perspective, from the tool sets and security capabilities that you're seeing out there today, and where you want industry to know you're interested in going.
Yeah, sure. So I think from our perspective, there's a lot of room for improvement on SIPR, right? On NIPR, we've made a lot of efforts over the years to improve the network security posture. There's a lot of support from the vendor community because there's a relatively large user base. But on SIPR, we don't necessarily have that. And so fully recognizing that there's a much smaller space for vendor investments because of the smaller user base, we still see a big need for us to move away from purpose-built solutions for that environment specifically towards one that delivers a very similar user experience and capability set on SIPR for that smaller user base. So I think from an interoperability perspective, an investment in open APIs on SIPR and kind of a refocus on our side on vendor-supported open source and vendor-supported commercial technologies is primed to kind of patch all of these different capabilities together the same way that we're doing on NIPR. And so one thing that you'll hear mirrored, I think, across our panel is that when it comes to zero trust, but also to collaboration, there's not a single tool set that we're bringing to bear that delivers all of that, and that really can't be. So in many cases, we're fielding parts of what constitutes that bigger capability set in a number of different capabilities. And so you can imagine if DoD 365 delivers some of our capabilities, and we're delivering some of them in Thunderdome, and DoDNet delivers some of them for the Fourth Estate users' desktop experience, all of that needs to be patched together, and so open API support is vital for that. And my call to arms today, and as far as I can make one, is for you all to gather around that to talk to us. We're not expecting for you to replicate what you're doing in the commercial space or on NIPR 101. we realize that there are things that are more pertinent to SIPR than others, and we don't want you to make investments where none are needed. But it's important for us that we get feature parity where it's needed, and that we get all of these tools integrated with each other.
And just to add to that, when we are thinking about the experience in IL5, in the DoD, there's roughly 14 tenants. When you think about IL6, when you think about zero trust and you think about single identity, think about all those modernizations, it's really important that if we're in a single environment, we don't want to have a larger footprint. It makes it really hard to achieve the modernization efforts that we're trying to get after. So we're pushing hard from our office. You talk about user experience, listening to the warfighter and the different components. They are also pushing for a single tenant. It helps get after this here, but it also improves the user experience. You're talking about a warfighting network. You want something fast, right? So that's one thing that we're working on. MDE is another one that we're hearing from the mission partner. When you talk about enhanced security, we're pushing Microsoft on the Hive side to roll that out sooner. They have a lead time on that right now, but if we work together in the DoD and prioritize what we're looking for them to deliver, they can meet our demand. MDE being at the top of that list there.
Right, and so prioritization of requirements is something that we, as the department, want to be able to provide to you as the vendors. So
Yep.
like Julian said, we don't want you to just invest in what you're doing in IL5 on IL6. It's important for us to be very vocal and transparent in what we need in the IL6 environment.
Yeah.
And so our agency will, as we codify what our modernization solution looks like, we will then share that with industry so that you can understand where we're seeking these key tool sets as the foundation for modernization.
Yeah.
So with that, I want to talk a little more about collaboration, right? Because I think there's a lot to discuss there, and you're leading the forefront on that from a collaboration perspective, especially as we look at other areas of getting the right data to the right people at the right time, right? Ultimately, that's the end goal, is to make sure that who's getting the data needs the data to do the mission, and that you're not held up by cross-domain solutions and limited to no access because of where you sit. So I want to talk to you about what you're seeing in 365 on IL6 and how that's going to benefit the mission.
Yeah, so all great points. I think what we've got, we started testing back in August, the Release 1 capabilities that Microsoft is delivering. And Release 1 includes Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, and OneDrive. We have, and this is no exaggeration, probably gone through thousands of tests. But part of that was also reaching out to the components a year ago and saying, what is important to you from a data segregation perspective? If we were to live in one tenant, how, what matters to you? So a lot of it was around data segregation. So when we tested out the R1 capabilities from Microsoft, we saw that, we had to have certain boundaries put in place, compliance boundaries, information protection, all of which tested very favorably. And because of that, we are now able to bring our schedule to the left and open up testing to start to invite some of the components to come in and kick the tires with us. Because, we do have their requirements, but things evolve from year to year. So giving them that chance to come in and kick the tires with us, run through those tests. I tell people, yes, we work at DISA, yes, we're providing an enterprise service, but this is for the DoD. When we talk about IL6, everything we're doing from a modernization perspective and from a Thunderdome is ultimately for the DoD. So really transparency is key, so why not get out there and let them come in and kick the tires with us?
Right, and the concept of us trying to design for the future collaboratively.
Yeah.
So I work with them daily as we try to figure out where we want to move forward in this new world, and almost in sort of that greenfield approach to things. And nothing that we're doing at the agency is being done in a vacuum at this point, because we want to do it right. So with that, Julian, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I would maybe just add that it's really important for us to go about collaboration and the integration between the services and us in a deliberate manner. I made the point at TechNet last year, and I'll just re-emphasize it here, that if we have multiple access solutions that are competing with each other and we don't achieve some level of integration on our warfighting network, on our C2 network, that's going to come at the detriment of the people that depend on that network to do their work. And so it's very important for us to talk to the services to kind of get at least a minimal level of integration between these components. So at the end of the day, the guy or girl that puts their life on the line doesn't suffer from our lack of talking. So just as Carissa and Jillian say, it's important for us to keep talking to the community to hear what the services, the combatant commands need from us, and then to jointly work towards that goal. Doesn't mean that we have to all pursue the same solutions, right? Diversity is a good thing, but we have to make sure that we talk to the vendors and demand some rudimentary level, or implement some rudimentary level of interconnection between these.
Yeah, and I would say to industry too, we want to hear from you, right? If you're looking for sponsorship, if there's things, you're trying to get into that IL6 space, because that is one thing. Microsoft is working hard to roll out capabilities on the SaaS side of the house. They're also working on the IaaS and PaaS side to support us, and they have that sponsorship. But there are going to be third-party tools, as I'm sure you see as well, that we're going to need to further secure the environment or to enhance capabilities, and we need it now.
Yeah, and
right?
Julian hit on that. There's no one solution
Right.
for everything that we need from a mesh architecture perspective. It's going to be multiple tool sets that are integrated. And so from our perspective, we'd like to hear from you specifically on, what you have, what's out there, sponsorships that you're interested in, and tools that you're interested in sharing with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think from an access perspective, right, from a zero trust enabling perspective, our focus is less on delivering the solution that everybody should adopt, rather than giving you a solution you can adopt if you don't have another one, but to give you kind of a blueprint of goals that you should accomplish in accordance with the zero trust reference architecture, and a way to go about it. But if you have existing investments that achieve the same thing, then by no means should you feel compelled to throw those away. If you can retool your current capability set and you can make it work with the enterprise deployment, then I think that's every bit as good.
Agreed. And I think we're coming up on time, and we really wanted to take an opportunity here to hear from you, have you ask your questions to us, and with that, I will open it up for a Q&A. And
If you could just raise your hand, and
Raise your
they'll
hand.
bring the mic around. We're happy to answer questions.
there's got to be some questions.
Hi. Thanks for the panel. What are you doing for data outside of the Microsoft domain?
That's a great question. So I'll go first. So I think data both on Nipper and on Zipper has been kind of a challenge for us, right? And has been a challenge for DoD for quite a while. Going after data in the Microsoft ecosystem was a kind of logical first step. There is some automation we can deploy until we build up some of the necessary retraining of our workforce to consistently and correctly label data. We're conducting analyses of alternatives for more broadly deployable solutions, I would say, that cover the data outside of that collaboration space. So we're very much looking at that solution space, but I wouldn't say that we've selected a specific technology or a set of technologies to accomplish that.
No, I don't have anything to add. Yes.
Hang on one sec.
John Klein, Johnson Controls. Are you guys looking at bringing OT into the SIPRnet for those highly classified operations to take that data with the network data that you have to make use of that?
Can you restate your question?
Yeah. Are you envisioning bringing OT data into your network?
What does OT data mean to you?
It means SCIF facility operations. It means sensors that support classified operations. It could be.
So I don't know that we've got specific use cases for that, but I would say that in the ecosystem we're working towards, anything can be a sensor, right? We're kind of moving away from treating specifically deployed devices as kind of the only telemetry emitting infrastructure we have, and looking at whatever we can get. So your cell phone now becomes a sensor every bit as much as the NDM that controls it. So as I mentioned, we don't have specific use cases that take facility data into account. I think the solutions we're deploying generally could be used for that if we had use cases. So if there are existing use cases that would benefit from that additional data, I would be happy to talk about it.
Any other questions?
Could you please compare the Navy flank speed program to the DIOS in terms of what's similar and what's different?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So I was mentioning earlier in the IL-5 world, we're in a federated environment across the DoD. Flank speed is the tenant that the Navy has. DIOS runs the DoD 365J tenant, where most of the defense agencies and the combatant commands reside. Ours is very diverse. We support over 80 different organizations. But when you break it all down, they have their own IL-5 tenant, and then we have ours that supports the DAFAs and the combatant commands. All of us, though, all 14 tenants, we have to manage what's called tenant configuration guides when you think of like different STIGs and things like that. So we have standard configurations across all 14 of us, but they're all IL-5 tenants and pretty much the same. What we're doing in DIOS, though, is paving the way on the IL-6 world. Flank speed is not leading that. We're doing that, and with the thought that we'll go into a single tenant, and then the Navy and the rest of the DoD will all live in one tenant, vice this federated environment. Really, because we're seeing a lot of cross-tenant collaboration challenges. When you have the Navy try to search for someone in their tenant that's a combatant command or a defense agency, it's very difficult to do that. Microsoft has improved releasing capabilities to create a better business-to-business experience, but it's taking them a long time to get there because that's not how their architecture was set up. The architecture was set up for the DoD to live in one environment together. So we're pushing hard, the DoD is pushing hard for all of us in the high side to live as one, vice having this federated environment. So a lot of information there, but hope that was helpful. Yeah.
Question for you. Defensive cyber operations, are you guys responsible for that, for all the network packet capture and decipher, or is it somebody else in the group?
So I would say that that's a collaborative effort, and there are many facets to defensive cyber operations. So sensing is a piece that Jillian, and she can talk about this herself, is focused on. But then there's also a question, kind of what stack we use to analyze that data. The threat model on SIPR is different than on NIPR, right? And I think that's important for us to realize. So we don't want to just cookie cutter redeploy the defenses and the types of sensors we've got on NIPR and hope for the best, but to tailor that architecture to the specific architecture of SIPR as a transport network, and the threats that are more prevalent there probably than on a more connected network like NIPR. So I don't think any one of us has outright responsibility, but we're all feeding into that. So Carissa, for example, with the MDE effort, is going to provide part of the endpoint security solutions portfolio that will feed telemetry into that stack. Somebody will have to figure out what the holistic set of sensors on Zipper should look like and where they're deployed. And then likewise for the analytics stack, I think there are still many questions to be answered, and probably not a single answer that works across the entire fabric, right? As I mentioned, Zipper is much less architected than Nipper. So the first step is kind of to improve some of the things that have grown organically but are maybe not architected in a very coherent manner, and to then at the same time that we're fixing those architecture shortcomings and focusing on that spin zero to get to a more coherent architecture to make sure we're deploying the right technologies and not just replacements for old technologies we had or that we're using elsewhere.
Yeah, I think you said it pretty well, Julian. There's no one solution, right? Because you're getting it from multiple places.
Which why the synergy here, right? And breaking down those barriers, I mean, it's different. We're moving to the cloud. You're seeing things evolve and change, and we've got to look at things holistically.
Yep.
Right. We're really taking an integrated approach to how we're doing this, and reaching across the entire agency for stakeholder buy-in to make sure that it's designed and implemented properly, and looked at from every angle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe just to add to that, I think one additional caveat that I don't think has been looked at closely by anyone yet is how we then apply that to our coalition forces, which obviously is a thing that needs to be solved, right?
Yeah.
We want to make access for them as friction-free as we can, but in a secure manner and in a coherent manner to the security protections we have elsewhere. And but we have to realize that we have no control in many cases over what's on the other side of the gateway there. So I think we're trying to figure out the best architecture to enable coalition use cases and expand outside of just the view of the department towards our coalition forces as well, and bring security without undue burdening them with additional security and management solutions that we dictate.
Yeah. Coalition is key in this conversation. Everything that we talk about is there in consideration.
Yep.
So, yeah. Is anything else?
Any other questions?
Well, thank you for having us today. We really enjoyed the open dialogue, and please feel free to ask us any questions on the side. One-on-one, we're more than happy to have the conversation.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.